people involved, but I think it really applied here was I really felt horribly aggrieved by somebody one day. I took it as a major violation of my personal trust and professional trust with this individual. And whenever I would talk about it, I remember like I would always say this saying to him, I always say, I don't wish him any harm, but I don't want to see him eating at my table, if that makes sense. Which is really just kind of indifference when you look at it. I mean, how righteous am I? Like, I'm putting myself up here that, I'm so mad at this individual that I don't, I'm not saying I want him dead or anything like, Abishai's saying, but I don't want him at my table. And I think having that indifference sometimes can almost be worse than death, because it means you just don't care at all. It's like you have a rage against that individual. It's just, constant down here in your heart. Henry Ward Beecher said, love cannot endure indifference. It needs to be wanted like a lamp. It needs to be fed out of the oil of another's heart, where its flame burns low. So I can remember telling this person that I forgave him, but in my heart, that flame just continued to burn low down there. And it was just constantly burning, keep me up at night. I'm sure my wife can attest to this, because I know she knows right where I'm talking about. The problem with that is eventually that fire is going to grow. I'm a fireman, been a fireman for a long time. A little fire starts a big flame, a little flame starts a big fire as you go along. And if you let this thing just keep going and keep going and keep going, and don't truly forgive them in your heart, it really just hurts you. Friends, that what I was showing to this individual, that wasn't indifference, that wasn't forgiveness, that was just rage. I was just mad about what they did to me. I couldn't let it go. I was walking on a beach in Pensacola with a good friend of mine down for training one day, and 10:30 at night, we're just walking on the beach, and I kind of poured my heart out to him about this. And kid's a good listener. I'm not a very good listener. Something I got to work on. Like I like to talk a lot, and he just sat there and listened. My wife shaking her head at me. I can't look over there. This guy's just a very good listener, and he listened to my whole story, probably an hour. I rambled on about this and how I felt so aggrieved by this individual that hurt me and what they did. And when he got done, he was like, George, because honestly, it seems like it actually changed you as an individual. It changed everything about you, like how you look at the world, how you interact with your family, and it did. A lot of things happened right after that. COVID happened. I stepped down here as a deacon. At the time, this was all at the same time. I was just in a bad place because I was harboring all this unforgiveness. I was telling everybody else that I forgave him, but I really didn't. I was sinning by keeping that to myself. And we need to work on that. I needed to work on that. So again, I'm sure I'm not the only one in this room who harbors some unforgiveness towards someone else. If you think about it down deep and long enough, I'm sure there's somebody somewhere in your life that you have some type of unforgiveness for. And the problem with that is it just makes us angry. It keeps us cold, it keeps us bitter, makes us resentful to everything. Every little thing will set you off, your kids, your grandkids, whoever, something at work that is a minor violation in the real world, you're just on edge and it just sets you off. And that was me for a long time. And I know that I was a bear to be around a lot of times, and for harboring that. I apologize, Stephanie. I know it wasn't fair to you neither, but I thank you for staying with me for it. So as I was saying, it was pointed out to me by a friend of mine that, sometimes there's offenses that are just so great against you that they can never be forgiven. And again, I was thinking about that, and again, I don't agree with it. I think you can forgive somebody. It could be a totally egregious offense, and I think you can forgive them. And if you don't have to go with me, but in Mark chapter 11, verse 25, Jesus said, to forgive those who sin against us even before they request it or take responsibility for what they have done. So that's my king telling me this is what I should be doing. So this is what I need to do. This is what we need to do. If you feel that there's someone that you need to forgive, then I would suggest the first thing that you do is take it to the Lord in prayer. That should be the very first thing we do when we have problems. And that's something that I wasn't doing. One of the reasons I stepped down from being a deacon here, and I thank Rod for keeping it for me, because he never really told anybody except probably other deacons, was I didn't feel I was leading my family in the way that I should have. And our prayer time had broken down at home, the things that we were doing, our Bible reading as a family, those things had fallen by the wayside. And some of it because of this, I was so upset about this, that why could this happen to me kind of deal. And so I ran away from it. I ran away from here, and we were at a point that it was the lowest I'd ever been since I'd been saved. And through a lot of prayer from the individuals that know about the situations. Some of them sitting in this very room. I thank you for sticking with me through that time and praying for me, because it's made a difference. So you got to take it to God in prayer. When we need to pray about everything, right? Is what it tells us. Pray about everything that goes on in your life. And this is no different for me. If we don't take our hurts and our needs to the Lord in prayer, then we can't have any reason for them to be worked out, to be fixed. If you're not willing to confess it to the Lord and let Him work through you, through that prayer time, you can't expect that it's going to get better on its own just because you magically will it to happen, or you think it's going to happen. It just doesn't work that way. Jesus said to Mark in 11, verses 25 and 26, "Whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against another one, forgive him, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father in heaven forgive your trespasses." See, we have to forgive in order to have our own trespasses forgiven by the Lord. Sorry, skip the page. So forgiving people does not hurt you necessarily, and it doesn't hurt the other person. It really just builds up on you. When you forgive somebody, I'm not saying you have to have them over for dinner. Like maybe somebody did something that was so egregious to you. Again, something, maybe physical harm or some type of mental, emotional harm that you just never gotten over. I'm not saying you have to have them over to your house for dinner and break bread with them, but you need to forgive them and put it behind you. This way here is not the first thing that's on your mind in the morning when you get up and the last thing on your mind when you go to bed, because that's what it was for me. Sometimes you have to forgive those who do not wish to be forgiven. There's some people out there that just will not listen to you. You know, you may try to go talk to them and forgive them, but if they won't see you or hear you or talk to you, you can still do that. You can still forgive them. You can still work through that in prayer with the Lord. By forgiving them, you relieve your pain and the pressure that you're having on your life, that you're putting on yourself, really. Oftentimes, the other person doesn't even know that you have these ill feelings towards them. Maybe what they saw is, what you took as this great egregious act against you, they just saw it as like another day. It wasn't a big deal to them. Maybe they don't even know that they offended you in that way. Without telling them, there's no way that they may not know. They may know. So we talked a lot about forgiving other people here up to this point, so I would like to finish up tonight by talking about what do we do when we have to be forgiven. So the next encounter we're going to look at here with David and Shimei is, just after Absalom has been killed. So Absalom's dead. King David is heading back into Jerusalem to take back over the kingdom. So in 2 Samuel 19, in verses 15 to 23, I'll read. "Then the king returned, and he arrived at the Jordan. And Judah came to Gilgal to meet the king and escort him across the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Bahurim, hurried down with the men from Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men from Benjamin with him, and Ziba, the attendant of the house of Saul, with his 15 sons and 20 servants, also rushed down to the Jordan ahead of the king. They forded the Jordan to bring the king's household across to do whatever the king desired. When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell face down before the king and said to him, 'My lord, don't hold me guilty, and don't remember your servant's wrongdoing on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king not take it to heart. For your servant knows that I have sinned. But look, today I am the first of the entire house of Joseph to come down and meet my lord and king.' Abishai, son of Zeruiah, asked, 'Shouldn't Shimei be put to death because he cursed the Lord's anointed?' David answered, 'Sons of Zeruiah, do we agree on anything? Have you become my adversary today? Should any man be killed in Israel today? Am I not aware that I am the king over Israel today?' So the king said to Shimei, 'You will not die.' And then the king gave him death." But Shimei recognized his sin, right? He realized that he did wrong, and he's coming back and he's